Hello and welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at the Battle of Deir Ezzor. There's been a few of these sort of scenarios, but the Syrian Arab Army look as though they're finally finishing it, bringing the situation to an end. It's pretty interesting. Let's get straight into play mode. Mainly because it's a lot closer than a lot of the other scenarios. I mean, for example, let's try something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, they're not all Deir Ezzor. Look at that. There's a Deir Ezzor. Deir Ezzor January. This is the one we're doing now. That's the Deir Ezzor counter-strike. The battle for Deir Ezzor city. I mean, let's look at that one. So the reason I'm sort of saying that is if you look at that, that's the sort of scale that it's at there. This is the one we're on. This is January. And there it is there. Deir Ezzor, and there it is there, and I know that there's a couple of other ones from much earlier on, and so the point is when you start to sort of, it's a singular argument that's common with a lot of games, war games, in that you can take the same scenario, for example the Battle of Waterloo, and one design team can write it, and yeah, this is spelt wrong. There's another one. I think this is an earlier one. This is still 2016. But you can have two design teams. You know, they both create the Battle of Waterloo, and one of them, they look completely different because of the scales they choose, and because of the features that they do include. I mean, I've seen someone look at some Napoleonic battles and compare and contrast to designers' maps. And the maps have been quite remarkably different. One showing undulations in hills that were deemed to be quite significant. And look, there's a road that goes nowhere. It shouldn't be like that. Roads that go nowhere. Hills that are significant because they basically block line of sight, allowing one side to place their cannons hull down, so to speak, just poking over the top of the hill, whereas in the other map the undulations were not there, and so the benefit of that wasn't counted, etc., etc. Now, I mean, that's just a very specific example, but I mean, you get very clear, and then there's also, designer stupidity like mine, in the sense that sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. I mean, where does the city end? Should this all be light urban, etc., etc.? But the point is, I've done this scenario quite a few times and all the maps look different, so it's interesting to look at that, even just the spelling mistakes like Al Dezur and all those. But what makes this sort of interesting to some extent is its scale. Well, I don't know what the scale is, and it's a shame you can't really see it here. Because the river obviously goes down here like that. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. Obviously it goes down like this and there. But Sacker Island is also goes like this, so it's quite a distinct island in its own right, but this is also an island. Like that. Now when you start to look at that, you might realise or come to the conclusion that this may be one of the reasons why Deir Ezzor has been so difficult to get back, because they had this natural defensive line, or the natural defensive sort of region or area. I mean, even this Horijat Kati Island is an island that's almost impenetrable. I mean, if you look at that, that's proper river. So if you consider that and bear that in mind, this is minor river. Now I could go back and make it proper river. It just looks, it's significantly narrower than this. I mean, this is the Euphrates, and it's, you know, I could have got away with using entire hexes for some of these river hexes, but that would make it look like lake. So this is maybe not insignificant. Now it would depend on whether or not I classified this. Let's just reload it. If I classified that as a major river, again, that would be impossible to cross, and I'm sort of thinking maybe I should have, because otherwise it's quite easy to just cross here. You know, there's no real obstacles, and you would cross here. But you can see the strategy the Syrian army have taken. I mean, not necessarily that it's a good strategy, or it's you know, there's anything clever about it, but they've actually taken this island first. And there are news, I don't know when they did it, but they've taken Sakar Island, which is this sort of thing here, and they're basically cutting across. Let's reload again. Go into map mode, map tool. There's a bridge there over the river, and so they're basically driving this way at the moment into there, but they're also driving this way, not from across the river, along here, and you'll see that reflected in the disposition of the units. So for example, you can see that we're close up here in contact ready to go across, but here it's a little more standoffish. The forces are sort of here, they're not in contact. I mean, we've got some contact here just because I wanted to actually make it clear that this is the front line according to the south front map, but the main push comes from here. I was going to include some engineers, but I haven't done yet. I might go back and do that, but I also might give the ISIS play some engineers, and there's a few things I just can't remember, in particular whether or not special forces have the ability to blow bridges up. I think they do, in which case I might give both sides some special forces, the Syrian army some engineers. The reason ISIS might have special forces or engineers is because they might want to destroy some of these bridges, because you sort of think, well, okay, well, this is all very very defined by the rivers and the presence of rivers. So we've got a bridge there, I could do a different colour pen tool, I can do that, but not at the moment. A bridge there, a bridge there, and a bridge there, and there's also a bridge there. So this is quite important for the number of bridges. I mean, these two hexes have 3 of the bridges, they have half the bridges amongst those 3 hexes, etc, etc. So it's interesting once it gets to this scale. Plus, as I said, you can sort of see why, you know, they've probably got all their reserves and resources on these island networks. And I mean, for a long time now, the front line has been, I mean, for all the time I can really remember, but the front line has always been like that. I mean, it was, I think it, before it went further down here, but you know, the Syrians have always held something over here, but there was a lot of sort of toing and froing this way. I think there's a lot of sort of standoff area, but the ISIS, you know, they held all this area. This was all sort of ISIS territory, and now it's all Syrian Arab Army, and they were sort of, you know, able to cross these bridges to reinforce, and, you know, logistics and etc, etc. They've obviously lost all of this, but they still got a presence here, I think there. So they still got this sort of northern presence, but they've lost pretty much everything on this side, and the airbase was down here, and this was the sort of the Raqqa road, and done all of that. And there's the other army base that was sort of somewhere out here or somewhere over there. So, you know, it's interesting geography for, you know, strategic defence. So worth looking at it from that point of view. With regards to, say, the actual current state of play, I'm going to give it a go. I'm glad I've now got this sort of more than 15-minute thing, but I'm not going to play it all the way through. But as I said, there's these attacks here. So if you sort of look in there, we've got some anti-aircraft. Now, I have actually not so much done this attack, but I set it up and I tried that attack, and yeah, the odds are quite stupendous to get across there, mainly because it's light urban, which I think is doubled. I can never remember. But it's also across a river, and that is a minor river, and they're also fortified. You know, so they're getting all these bonuses and halves, and so to be quite honest, I'm not sure exactly how to sort of do this. I mean, you can obviously maybe start doing the calculations. Now, I did actually sort of add a lot more into here, doubling a lot of things. You know, they only had, I think, 1 armour, 1 mechanised and 2 motorised units, and then I just added all this other stuff. I think I might have had a bit more, but it got the artillery support. So the thing to do, I think, at this stage would be to say, okay, I'm going to actually think about this one battle, you know, this sort of cutting across the river into this hex, because that's pretty much what it's all about at this stage for those units. And you sort of think, well, hang on, you know, would I just do that? And again, it's sort of, why wouldn't I just sit there and pound it with artillery? Again and again until it's a lot weaker. You know, send in some airstrikes. So I think what I'm going to do, and I don't want to do this I don't want to spend too much time just doing this particular aspect, but what I'm going to do quickly is try and calculate what I think the odds should be. Well, let's start off with it's light urban, so let me just actually look at the rules. Let's open the rules up in another window. Light urban, the defence is 2, which means it's doubled. Dense urban is 3. So they're going to be doubled in there. They're in a fortification, which means they're tripled. So that's times 6. And plus they're across a stream. I wonder if I've got streams in here. Okay, streams. Streams are thinner, dark blue line. Well, I should say they're a thinner, lighter blue line. Oh no, they are darker blue. Streams have an attack modifier of 0.7. All units can move over a stream, but they end their movement. So an attack modifier is an attack modifier of times 0.7. So they're basically times 6 in there, and these are like times 0.7 on their attack. So, bearing that in mind, what have we got in there? We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 6. 16, 32, 48. God, I don't want to make this too complex, but 48, I need a pen or something. Make a little note. So that's 48. My pen works, what a miracle. I haven't opened it in about 10 years. So it's 48 in defence. And here we've got 3, 6, 10, 14, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, 33, 37, 41 versus 41. So basically, in its own right, it's 41 times 0.7. So, you know, I mean, that's getting down to about 30. So, but we've got armour, and there's no armoured units in there. And so that will give us these units a little bit of a more. So, but the thing is, I think at the maximum it's going to be a 1-to-1. So that's still, you know, a pretty tight battle. Now, I'm not doing it exactly because I always suspect that my maths is wrong, and I don't want to be shown up on that. Although, you know, I don't mind admitting that I've got doubts on it. But when it gets complex like that, because there's a lot of things that I sometimes even myself forget. For example, I could maybe somehow try and get a surround, but there's no real surround opportunities here. And then the question I think is, well, do I want to do that attack? Is there something else I can do? Well, there's nothing else to get onto this sort of central island, but I can start using my artillery and my air power. So coming up with a strategy, I can sort of think, well, how about I give it 5 turns of artillery? What can ISIS do against me? Well, they do have quite a lot in here. A lot in there, look at that. I wonder why that's... yeah, I know why it's stacked up like that, but a lot of artillery, a lot of rockets, but they've also got a lot of insurgents. And these people can come out and do their sort of car bomb things. So there's that to consider. But they don't really have a lot. They have a reasonable amount of artillery. 1, 2, 3, 4. That could actually get me in there. So as a big stack, I'm sort of a sitting duck. So maybe I can't afford to hang around too much. Although the artillery, the rockets, they'll only ever affect the top 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly. Sometimes they get the 5th one, because I'm not sure it's quite correct. But the thing is, they're not going to be able to just inflict damage on everything. So it'll only be these first, and they might not necessarily be these ones. It might be these ones here going backwards. But they're only going to get a few of these units at a time unless they start routing. But obviously I can't sit there and take all this rocket power, permanently. But at the same time, what other heat can we push on them? Because I mean, we're going to, for example, when you start looking at these offensives here, well, that hex is going to fall. We've got a reasonable amount in there, a reasonable amount there. This hex, I mean, we don't even need a stack for that. They're going to be 2 doubled. Well, they're going to be 1 doubled to 2. So, I mean, I could probably, all I need is 14, which I've easily got in there. I mean, that's for a 7 to 1. I could do it on a lot less. I could attack it with just this 1 mechanized unit and get a 2 to 1. So, and then once I'm in there, I could then actually, there's not much to stop me from moving into here and through into Deir Ezzor proper. And so I could spend the first 2 turns creating so much trouble for this front that these rockets will have to be used over here. Similarly, I could spend my air power on these rocket stacks, although I'm really not convinced that will be the best place for them in that short term. So, it's really the sort of thing, well, what should I do? What should I do? And to be quite honest, I'm still in a situation where, because I'm doing the recording, I don't feel I have the luxury to sit here and sort of, think, what am I going to do? Because I really don't know. It seems to me that, I've got to maybe do something. Now, again, this hex here is not fortified, so I could probably move into that, and there's only 4 in defence, so that's going to be, but they're tripled, so that's going to be 12. So I could maybe use some artillery on that and take this hex out and assume that I'm going to get this one, or maybe move something into here and then use that to really breach here. Now, and this is another thing that sort of gets me about these sorts of hex games and in how readily they model these situations, and they don't. There's no. I was thinking about this earlier on today. There's no real. When you're playing a hex game, you sort of think, well, okay, I can take all of this. It's just all I need is a few sort of good results, even at 2 to 1s. If I do 5 2 to 1 attacks, one of them is going to work. Well, the thing is, real life's not like that. I mean, they've been trying to take this Deir Ezzor out for nearly 2 years, and if it really was just a case of rolling against the numbers on a CRT table, combat result table, they would have done it a long time ago. So there's reasons why they haven't been making progress, and there's reasons why even they wouldn't make progress now at this stage into here, although their momentum is significant. They've been in there now for 2 years. They're now basically completely cut off from everything, and have been for a while, and they've also just taken out Sakar Island and got momentum coming up here. So this is why I've done the map again, and as I've already demonstrated, this is about the 5th time I've done this. But it's the same thing. It's not going to model it exactly, but I think it's time to sort of say, well, this is what's happening, and we could almost assume that it's going to happen as quickly as this. So we could sort of do that attack and see what happens. Plus, I've given ISIS enough here to sort of, I don't think it's realistic, but enough to sort of respond in some way to that. So if there is a breach here, for example, they've got units that they can then sort of reinforce these areas with, and it is sufficiently fortified, these are all fortifications, all of them there, for ISIS to be able to move around and still have their defensive networks. And I think that's fair, because they've been sort of sat in there for nearly 2 years, and the whole place is probably, heavily entrenched. One huge sort of, pillbox type sort of setup. So they're probably falling back, so they don't have to sit there and dig in and entrench. They're going from one defensive line to the other. The only thing that really takes that back, from what I consider to be a plausible reality, to some extent, and it's only a small extent, is that as soon as the Syrian Arab Army get into one of these hex, they're similarly fortified, but I don't think the fortifications work in the same way for a victorious army, so to speak. I mean, to start off with, the Syrian Arab Army is using more conventional methods, and all sort of the principal points are probably, I think it's less of an argument, the principal points are facing the wrong way, but they're less likely to use that sort of defensive strategy, and they do quite often get routed out of, they could enter this hex, and when they're attacked by ISIS in a counter-attack with an insurgent unit or a midnight irregular assault, for example, they run away, because it's not really how they are designed to fight. And so the defensive bonus in these sort of areas is less than ISIS would take from that same situation. So you can't really now in a tabletop game when it's written on paper, you could set rules up. ISIS get ×4 in these defensive hexes, whereas Syrian Arab Army only get ×2. Now that could be a fair rule to make, but in these sorts of things, because this game encompasses so many years, you can't do that. So without further ado, having spent 20 minutes talking, thankfully, out of my new extended warble machine, I think I'm going to try and do some artillery into here, just see what happens. Now I get 4 lots. Shall I do all of it? Now I have also thought of, and I keep thinking about this, and I probably won't do it for a long time yet, I'm going to use all the artillery into there, why not? Of putting in some kind of factor that every time you do artillery into a city, the city loses not so much a defensive factor, but an integrity factor, and then linking that up somehow to a political factor or a political will, so that you can't just go sitting there blowing cities up like Raqqa, Mosul, Aleppo. Russia is now accusing, and I don't think there's a lot of foundation for this. It appears that Russia are accusing America of carpet bombing Raqqa, and I don't think they did. The photos don't look. They've got comparisons of Dresden. I don't think they look like Dresden. It's a choice photo of a few sort of ruins, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it still has an effect on the city, and I think that has a sort of an effect. But I don't want to create a game where all of a sudden it's so much of a factor that a person that doesn't really understand the deeper nuance of those sorts of rules would find it difficult to play. So hang on, it's not working. I'm not getting a defensive factor. So it'd only be a sort of a higher level thing. And one of the things I don't like about those higher level things is because they're essentially an aspect of what I call gamification. I know that's a game, but a lot of these games, they gamify things with victory points and things like that, and then you start chasing victory points, and I just really don't like that, because you start chasing victory points and start ignoring the real essence of what you're actually doing, and I call that sort of like pseudo role-playing. I mean, you should be sort of thinking, well, we can't really keep bombing this city up because it will just be ruins, and that is a factor. If they were to sit there, just because you could just sit there every turn bombing it. Now the other way around that might be to limit ammunition on these, so they've only got a certain amount of ammunition. And that's something I've also thought of, but I don't really think I have the full skills to sort of implement that sort of rule, or more, a lot more, or more accurately, to implement the resupply. And also, I don't think that it goes against my sort of initial intentions to make the game simple enough for someone who doesn't really understand about wargaming to sort of to be able to play and not find out, hang on, why is my artillery not working now? It was working a minute ago, and they don't understand supply, and then they don't understand how to put themselves back into supply. But their depression 0, 3.9, 2.25, 1.1. That's pretty good. I'm going to bring in an airstrike on this. Now, the thing about this airstrike is that we might suffer from a lot of anti-aircraft. Let's see. You know what? There's so much anti-aircraft in there, and I can't remember how it works, but I'm not going to do this. I want to be sure that I've taken a few of these anti-aircraft units out before I start committing my air power. And that is a role-play aspect of it. How real that is, I don't know, because I'm not sure that their ground AA is that powerful. But the Syrian Arab Army's air force isn't that great either. They're running on, you know, pretty old machines that are held together with sticky tape. So, but I'm going to withhold that. But I do want to wait until I've got another round of attack on that. So what I'm going to do now, I've used up all this other artillery, but there's some artillery here. So I'm going to try. I think I'm going to bomb this one. 0.4 on that, so that's hardly worth it. 0.4 on the other one would have been more significant. So we've now committed something there. Again, the air defence units would be, they're all in there. Too much to commit my air power at this moment. So I really want to take this hex out here first. And what have we got under there? We talked about that one, but that's quite an easy hex to take. A little easier than this one, so it might be worth coming around here and breaching like that. Now that's not exactly how they're doing it on the other thing, and the other thing, that this area is key, and I'm not sure I've put enough units in there to reflect that. But what I'm going to do, based on the counters that are in front of me, I'm going to do what I just did now, target both of these. So all I need is 14 into there. 4, 5, 6, 7. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some armour and some infantry. I'm going to try and really keep it limited to 2 units against that. It gives me 7, but these will get a bonus, so they'll be worth about 6. So this will be worth maybe about 10. So it'll be approaching about 5 to 1. 3 to 1 and exchange. Now I didn't need that. That was a mistake. That was an exchange. Oh, that's right. Oh, I'm not sure how this works, but on an exchange, the irregulars will retreat. Clearly. I've forgotten about that. It's been so long since I've actually had an exchange on an irregular unit. Usually just walk all over them. And that wasn't good for what I wanted to achieve. But I didn't use all my forces, so I can definitely it's not very well movement. No more movement. The rest of these should be able to move in there. Okay, so there's those 2 units left. I'm trying to sort of break through. How did he get 9? That's insane. I think I know why. He's got a defense of 1. Oh, it's simple and obvious. Wow. But because he's a regular, it didn't affect me. I didn't retreat. Or did I? Two depressions. So this was a completely... I got an attack and retreat on a 1-to-1 with a die roll of 10. I mean, that could have been better. But I've had 2 completely failed attacks. I mean, the only reason he retreated before was for some reason I hadn't really sort of taken a lot of note on. Well, we've got to have some success here. And another exchange. And that exchange at least forced him back, because they're very tough. Okay, well, we've got some other units here. An option to bring them up this road and sort of sit them there, possibly to attack that, or to bring them all the way along here and possibly attack this on this turn. I mean, they are weakened. I think I'm going to okay. Okay, let's go for an attrition. What can we do here? 4. They're not fortified. They're dug in. It's going to be like 4 times 2, no, times 3, so it's 12, and dug in 24. So it's going to be 1 to 2. So again, that's stupid, but I can sit them there and do an attrition. So it's a lot tougher and successful. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move these units in here. And they're going to be, I'm going to do an attack there. They're going to be 2 in theory. And an exchange. 3 to 1 and an exchange, but at least that forced him back. These have some movement left, so I'm going to try an attrition roll into there. unsuccessful. And here I do an attrition roll. 1.8. Oh, that was some success. Right, everything else is going to stay as it is, other than here we've got some artillery. Which I'm going to try and bring down on this stack here. Okay. That's nice. 1.15, 1.55, 0.2, 0.80. Okay. So that was very disappointing, I think, in that turn. It's going to skip through the ISIS turn, I think, because to be quite honest, they've got so many big decisions to make. Now, again, I think this is where a second play would really do well, because I think the whole point of being able to push back, say, a hex like that, or this hex being threatened, now means that these hexes are vulnerable, because there's no way we're going to really keep that next turn. And, you know, if they continue to carry out the bombardment over here, again, they're going to lose. You know, it's only a matter of time before that does become weakened. You know, even if they sit there stationary, you know, they're still pretty depressed. I mean, they're going to take a hammering next turn and probably lose that. So, for example, here, what do we do? But we've got so many units in here, and then none of this sort of threat along this front really came to any fruition. But I think next turn it probably will be a little easier to maybe take these hexes here. And so, to really play this ISIS turn through properly, I think it would take a lot more time. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I can't even see the bridge there, which makes it a little awkward for reinforcing. So we've got to stay. I haven't put any units over here. This is all Syrian Arab Army. In fact, it's a major mission. I'll have to go back and do that. We've got Syrian Arab Army units all across here threatening this bridge, so much so that they could be attritioning across this bridge and carrying out artillery fire over here. I'll have to go back and sort that out. I don't know why I missed that. Anyway, now those units can move in there, but we're going to assume they've got to defend there. We're going to assume that these units have got to defend this bridge, and these units are all playing their role in defending this part of the island. So it's, what can we defend that with? Now we can't really move through there, because as soon as we get there we're in a zone of control, I believe. Yep. There's a river there, but I think the zone of control goes over it. But we could move these units into there and really double that up and move some units into there. So let's do that. Do I want to retreat from there? I'm not sure, so I think if I do, it's going to make it easy for him. But if I don't, chances are I could hold, probably be retreated, possibly not get eliminated, so probably worth forcing the Syrian Arab Army to fight for that. Again, leave it as it is there. I think I want to reinforce this hex. I think I want to do it to some extent with that. Now, we've put a hole in there, so I think ISIS are going to fall back onto that. Now ISIS have fallen back. Now this is another thing that I put down to the role play on how these things work, in that you should be able to put pressure in certain areas and not necessarily create a breakthrough, because logically the other player will then have to fall back. Now they've fallen back just because I'm not really thinking 100% clearly at the moment, but they've fallen back into these much better defended hexes here. For example, we could give these two hexes up and fall back into there and there. But at the moment I think those are actually pretty strong hexes, even though, because they are dense urban, they're not fortified, but they are dug in, so they're only a factor of 1 down. So instead of getting 3 times 3 for a fort, they're getting times 2 for being dug in, for being entrenched. So it's worth holding there. So we've moved back, but the thing is, if you by doing that attack, we sort of forced them to move back, and it forced the whole line to move back. So for example, if you took that, it could have forced these units to move to actually fall back. And similarly, if we'd actually taken that, this unit might have actually fallen back. So it's not a case of just pushing each hex back individually, but strategically pushing certain hexes back, certain units back, so that when the other player takes their turn, they follow suit by falling the rest of the units back, as you might imagine. Now, in the interest of expediting things, I'm just going to go back onto the Syrian turn, and I'm going to see what damage we can do over here with again the artillery. But now we've got more units in there. So we're probably just hitting the fresh ones, I don't know. No depressions. 3, 2.15, 8, 0, 0. We could get a rout. No. 9.45, so he would have been doing a fairly hefty morale check. Now the question is, because I'm now coming up against the hour, God, it was better when I was doing 15-minute blasts, because then no one's going to watch it. Do I want to do that attack? I haven't done any damage against the air defences. See what the artillery can do here. .9. So instead of trying to be clever, I think what I'm going to do this turn. What's all this? Where did they come from? Oh right, yeah, they were up against that before. I think what I'm going to try and do is make sure I get this hex. That is insane. That was insane. Right. Clearly underestimated the difficulty of attacking into these cities. I think I'm going to have to go back and really sort of try and beef the Syrian army up a little bit. It seems, like they've got superior numbers, but I think they really need to start. And it's to some extent it's something that I do prefer to be done, but it doesn't make for good gaming, visual gaming. And that, what I mean by that is to spend time firing your artillery, because in a lot of games people just don't do that. They don't fire their artillery lots and lots, which is what they should be doing. We've done it there twice, but because of, if I carry on like this, it'll be over an hour. So I'm going to commit this assault, Now remembering that this unit here, I think this one here is at 9.4, so he's at full strength. He's at 80%. So they're not particularly strong. They're stronger than they were, but I can't believe that was a 1-to-1. That was everything. So this could be a less than a 1-to-1. I don't know. Let's just do it. 1-to-2. Wow. Really need to sort of spend a lot more time with the artillery. Now, I'm not going to go any further than that because clearly I'm not going to make any ground into Deir Ezzor, but I think it's a pretty good model for how difficult it is. And again, you can take this from two angles. You can sort of accept the modelling, which I don't, and sort of say, wow, you know, we can see how it's so tough, which you can't because it's just the numbers. Or you can, well, it provides us with an example of sort of like why it might be so slow, but also why you would need to take a lot more time prepping these places with your artillery that to some extent has unlimited ammunition, but we know it doesn't have unlimited ammunition in the sense that we know it does. And what I mean by that, I know it sounds like a paradox or just nonsense, is that, you know, the Syrian army could probably supply as much artillery ammunition as they want. They're not limited by anything pressing like a World War II logistics problem. They can probably supply it faster than they can shoot it. You know, they've got days and days and days and weeks and months to actually prosecute this assault, and you know they're probably not getting this close without the effect, the long run effect of that. And to some extent, also another criticism that's self-imposed is that I quite often put more units in than I should for things like ISIS, because if you actually count these as companies, there's, you know, 200, there's probably, you know, 10,000 troops here when they've probably only got about 3,000 or 4,000. But I sort of do that because I assume that there's more of a split in the numbers, in that it's more of a presence, because they probably do have a presence all along this river bank and this, you know, where I've got units, but they're probably not as dense. You know, so you might have one company that's spread out. So in other words, I could maybe do it more at a, you know, a sort of a platoon level or something like that. But the justification I have is really it's more representative. I mean, you're playing elements of, you know, in a sort of a struggle, so to speak, and the dispositions and the front lines are probably fairly accurate. So, you know, to all intents and purposes, you know, things like scale are less relevant. So we're achieving the same ends without really truly understanding, you know, the full scale of what's what, i.e. the full numbers at play. But yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I do find that really quite entertaining. I can't remember what that second point I was going to make was, other than the fact that, you know, you can see the game is, you know, is accurate. But I think, you know, essentially it's probably not quite as I anticipated. But I do think that I'm going to put some more Syrian Army units on to give them the option to at least being able to sort of do more than put everything almost against one hex and not get anything. You know, being at a 1-to-1. I think they should be at least being able to make the choice to get up to a 2-to-1. I'm not saying it should be easy. You know, they shouldn't be. I'm not saying we should be able to get it up to 6 and 7-to-1s. But you know, they're not going to be attacking if they've only got 1-to-1 odds. You know, no armies actually carry out attacks and concentrate forces when the best they can get is a 1-to-1. Or, you know, so I think I'm going to put a few more in. I don't want to take any more away from here because I do think it should be a hard slog. But it's one of these games again that. To some extent, because I don't really play these things through and through, because I just enjoy making them so much and maybe doing the odd video, which is generally the only time I do it, is that you sort of think, well, how long would it take to play this properly? You know, and you know, if you would say doing something like creating an after-action report on every move, you know, one of these turns on this game, this is not a small game. This you know, it's already taken me 15 minutes. I know I've been talking about it nonsensically, and this is in theory maybe the second turn. but to do it properly, to think things through, to create an after-action report. Not that I'm counting the time to do that, what that would be, but to sort of think it through and make the notes and sort of play it as you would properly play a game. This could take hours. I do sell these things as sort of, do it in your tea break, and we have sort of done it in the tea break. But to play this through and through. I've played some pretty hefty war games in my time. I think we've got Roads to Gettysburg and Pillion's Last Battle and things like that. And you commit entire days to doing those, and the hours add up. And you can maybe do one of these turns in half an hour, maybe, or maybe 40 minutes. You can probably get through quite a few more, especially if you get in the swing of things and understand what you're doing. But I think that it's definitely a sizable game. Just like a lot of others, and that's why I try to keep a lot of the games down to small maps that are easily digestible and easily played in a much shorter amount of time. But the thing is, this is not a big map. This doesn't have as many units as some of the games do have. So it's quite an eye-opener, really, for me to see how much thought and input something like this would really actually warrant. But as I said, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to put in some more Syrians here, beef them up all around just ever so slightly, and hopefully that will appeal to you. I was thinking, I really want to play that because I think I can really see what's happening. But just as a sort of final note, what we're looking at here is what's happening at the moment with the Syrian Arab Army trying to sort of go across this bridge and into this. And as you say, we've tried it. Well, we've tried 2 rounds of artillery preparation, and we tried an assault, and we failed. So let's see how the Syrian Arab Army in real life fare. Okay, I'll speak to you later. Cheers, bye.